Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace dropping in on you. I thought about doing this as a live stream on YouTube, and then I kind of thought it was a little early in the morning. I'm shooting this at about 7:11 in the morning. I've been up since 4:30 doing everything that I need to do, things I do in the morning, and I'm sitting up and when I finish my morning prayer and meditation, my priming for the day, one of the first things I came across was an article that lauded Dwayne Wade and Gabrielle Union as being the model parents for rearing transgender children. And I said, okay, it's time to address this. Now, I've addressed where Dwayne Wade is in standing with his son and loving his son and being accepting of his son's sexual identity and all that it comes with. My point primarily in addressing that was that he's too young to be exposed to all of what's going on in the media. He's too young to be exposed to gay pride parades, regardless of where you want to stand with him. I admitted that while I personally don't support homosexuality in the Black community for a number of reasons, that if any of my children were to tell me, we have 13, if any of them were to tell me they were gay, I would love them the same, love them hard, be there for them without judgment. But I would probably refrain from any events that went against my personal conviction. And they would know I love them by how I handled them and by how I treated them and how I spent time with them. I would not be ashamed of them. I would love my kids. Each person has to develop who they are and their sense of identity. Not all people are going to identify the way we want them to. That's the reality. But I stand firmly on my conviction that I don't support it in the Black community. And I have my reasons I'm not going to get into. I will say they're not religious. With that being said, I don't believe a 12-year-old is emotionally, psychologically, or spiritually developed enough to cope with the ridicule that comes from people who simply are mean-spirited, simply have a very closed mind, and don't understand the damage they're doing to a 12-year-old with their ridicule. How you feel about his father and his father's behavior is one thing, but exposing a child to that is not good parenting. Stand by your child, love your child, be there for your child. I'm never going to tell a Black man to disown his child. I don't care what's going on. We don't have room for that. But protect your child. That's the number one responsibility of manhood, is to protect. Even before we provide, we've got to be protectors. And so that is immensely important that come out. But when they are being paraded as quote unquote the model for parenting transgender children, you have to understand what's going on here. It's obviously an agenda. I personally believe it's an agenda from inside by Gabrielle Union to push her activism within the gay community and in other issues. She's strengthening her stance and her support and her base using D. Wade and Zion as props. D. Wade has some things that, some people would question in his own behavior. And this isn't what this is about. That's for another thing. And I'm not really big on one-on-one addressing what a man decides to do. I have my stance. I made my stance. So I'm not attacking the brother on that. What I am saying is, here are the facts. You know me. I'm not big on emotion. I'm not big on how I feel solely. How I feel is how I feel. What I want to look at is, what does the evidence and the data say about certain behaviors? Can we look at history and determine that there's enough data scientifically, historically, socially to support a certain behavior, or to speak against a certain behavior. And so I'm looking always at the data. So when we talk about a model for parenting in any situation, the first thing I think of is we don't have enough data on rearing transgender identified children to determine who is a model at this time. It's another way of normalizing behavior that is diametrically opposed to what is considered the standard idea of what is a behavior. And this isn't about telling people what to think or what they should believe in or what they should do. This is about saying we don't have enough evidence historically, socially, scientifically, to sit up and determine what's the best way to parent, because they are putting him out there, because they're exposing him, because they're big upping him, because it has become a spectacle. All of a sudden, they're ideal. Well, we wouldn't expose our heterosexual 12-year-olds to highly sexually charged events and conversation. We wouldn't. We wouldn't take a regular 12-year-old to Freaknik or the Kappa Beach party. We wouldn't. But the kid is being taken to gay pride parades. And if you've ever seen any clips from gay pride parades, it's off the chain. It's the gay version of Freaknik and the Kappa Beach party. It simply is. It's all kind of stuff going on. And, you know, whether you think that type of behavior is aberrant or not, it's sexually charged. This is not about female-male attraction. This is sexually charged. And that's not something you expose a 12-year-old to. So when we look at this and we start to talk about, okay, what's really going on here? There's obviously an agenda, and unfortunately, Zion is being pulled in the middle of it. I don't know if he's being coached, but some of the things that he said is definitely not something that comes out of the mouth of a 12-year-old, no matter how intelligent. It's just not how 12-year-olds think. It sounds like it's coached. And so my thing is, are we really allowing this child to figure this out on their own? Are we allowing this child to move through the motions of discovering who he is and then allowing that to be what it is? Again, this isn't me saying either way influence it. I can tell you from the data, as I did in the previous video that we did on this particular topic, that when left alone and not influenced, almost 80% of children who struggle with sexual identity will eventually choose their naturally assigned identity. And my thing is, let a child discover themselves. Let them discover themselves, because what happens is if you push them either way, if they are identifying with being, if they ultimately identify with being heterosexual, but because they had questions, you push them towards any form of alternative identity, then they're going to have problems psychologically later in life because they're not living their truth. If they truly identify with being some form of, of the alternative, and I don't want to link them, I'm not trying to pick fights here today, but homosexual, lesbian, gay, queer, transgender, and whatever else, if they identify with that, and it's like really actually how they identify, it's not influenced in any other way. And there's still a lot of questionable science being thrown out there that should be challenged. And I will, I have, and I will. But just say, there's no influence outside of their natural experiences, because the natural experiences are definitely playing a role in this. And I'll talk about that in a second. But here we are. If you leave them alone, they normally figure it out. And generally speaking, the vast majority normally eventually get to being what would be their natural assigned sexual identity. And so Those that don't. Those that do. But what you have to do is allow that to be their decision, not because you're pushing an agenda, not because it makes sense to you. That is not how you're going to get it done. So in essence, my thing is we don't have enough evidence one way or another to talk about what's the best way for raising transgender identified children. So we definitely can't start labeling parents who thrust their children into the spotlight, who push an agenda look like more than the child. Again, there are conversations being had with this child that are inappropriate for a 12-year-old. I think that everybody's going to have their opinion, and everybody is allowed an opinion in this world. But the child shouldn't be exposed to all those opinions. The child needs to really sit down and figure out what's going on with them. A lot of questions needs to be asked. Somebody needs to ask the question, and I don't know, so I don't want to speculate, but somebody needs to ask the question. If we're going to have this as a discussion and they're going to put themselves front and center, they open themselves up to scrutiny and criticism in the understanding of what they're doing and how they're doing it. This isn't going into someone's home and telling them what to do. This is someone bringing their home out into the public and exposing it. And when you do that, you expose it to ridicule, you expose it to criticism, you expose it to scrutiny. It's just how things happen. If you want your privacy, you keep your privacy, because this didn't have to get to this point. People could have drawn their speculations because of his mannerisms, but that's all it would have been, was speculations, until you bring it forth and you make it a big deal. Then you lead to questions. Here's the question that I would have, and I think that most people have to have. Where's his biological mother? What role is she playing in these decisions that are a part of his development? That's key, because the absence of his mother is also an impact on him emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. So we need to know where is she at on this? You know, is she involved? If so, what is her stance on it? If not, why? All of those things matter, because you're painting yourself as the ideal situation, So we need to know what that means, what it looks like, why you're ideal, you know, and all of the variables, because you put yourself in that situation. My thing is, that is not the way that you handle a 12-year-old. We're not having sexual conversations in depth with 12-year-olds. You know, now, you know, when my sons have gone into puberty, we've had to talk. But just that, and it's not about anything else. It's simply, this is what's happening in your body right now. And it's a part of developing, and that's it. The more deeper issues, the more complex issues come as they develop and evolve into a place. Eventually, they'll get where they are sexually attracted to either girls or boys. All my boys were sexually attracted to girls. Then there's another conversation you have to have at that time, and that's not 12. Because, see, the thing is, conversations plant seeds. You start talking about sexual intercourse at 12, kids will become interested in what you're talking about. And you can fast forward behavior through conversation. And you have to understand that. And so you allow the development and the conversation and questions that kids ask guide that. You know, when they're talking about, hey, you know, she daddy, she fine, daddy, blah, 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 daddy, you know, like this here, you know, and she got him, you know, feeling some kind of way, then it's time to have a talk, you know, about responsibility, about sexual responsibility, about the importance of how you handle a woman, that sexuality is a part of a bigger picture, and that if you isolate it, it can lead to a lot of dangerous things. There are conversations you got to have, but not at 12. Not when you're still figuring this thing out. But to put them up as, quote unquote, the model couple for rearing transgender children, we don't have enough of that going on to sit up and know what the model looks like. You know, and again, you know, this is me moving in a way that's sitting up and saying, okay, we're talking about science here. We're talking about social sociology and psychology here. We're talking about how people develop, how people learn, how people become. And, you know, whether you're on one side of the fence or the other side of the fence, whether you support it or whether you're against it, there are just certain things you don't do. And to me, what they're doing may sound good to those who are in the LGBTQ community. It may sound good to them because it's pushing their agenda. It's giving a green light to their community. But how is it going to be for the child? He's not the mascot for the LGBTQ community. He's not their logo. He's not the spokesperson. He's a 12-year-old child. He needs to be treated like a 12-year-old child and allow the space to figure this out with the covering of his parents. His parents are exposing him way too much. And that's just simply not acceptable. That's my take on it, and I'm going to get out of here. You guys have a great